Tonight, breaking news. In the last hour, U.S. forces have launched a second wave of strikes today against Iran. The U.S. says it is targeting Iran's military capabilities to threaten ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Despite Donald Trump's claims that the oil is flowing like never before, Sky News finds the number of tankers carrying fuel from Gulf ports has plummeted. We'll also hear from the family of a British man jailed in Iran who say he now faces a longer sentence for talking to the media. Keir Starmer says goodbye as Prime Minister and gets a standing ovation from MPs. A Sky News helicopter finds a Russian warship in the North Sea off the British coast. And we could find out by the end of the hour if England are heading to the World Cup final. Good evening. We start the program with breaking news. In the past hour, the United States has announced that it has launched a second round of strikes today against Iran. The Iranian news agency Mehr has reported that explosions have been heard in the cities of Chabahar and Bandar Abbas on the Gulf Coast and Hawaz, which is close to the border with Iraq. Well, our U.S. correspondent David Blevins is in Washington. So first of all, David, what is the latest that we're hearing about these attacks?
Well, we are now into the fifth consecutive night of strikes, although arguably the fourth night never ended because the Americans were bombing Iranian targets this morning in daylight. They're doing that again right now. So this is effectively going on around the clock now. A short time ago, we heard from U.S. Central Command in Tampa, Florida. They said the strikes are targeting Iranian military capabilities used to threaten vessels freely transiting through the Strait of Hormuz. So there we have confirmation, if we didn't already know it, that the centre of gravity has really shifted in this war from Iran's nuclear capability to its military capability, particularly around the coastline of the Strait of Hormuz, because the commander-in-chief here in Washington, Donald Trump, appears to have seriously underestimated Iran's ability to disrupt marine traffic in the world's busiest crude oil shipping route. And we can all see the impact that is having on global prices.
And David, the president has been speaking in the past hour. I think he's still speaking now. He's at a defense summit in Pennsylvania. And obviously the war with Iran has reduced the U.S. supply of various military equipment, especially missiles. What's he been saying?
Yeah, in the last few minutes, he's announced a $10 billion investment, creating 4,000 jobs in Pennsylvania in weapons production. Perhaps that speaks to the depleting stockpiles of weapons because of the length of time this war has gone on. On arrival at that Defence and Innovation Summit, he was asked if he was giving Iran a deadline, presumably to come up with a deal. He said he wasn't in the business of deadlines, but they know the story. And he has just a few moments ago repeated that in terms of the military operation that's going on right now, everything is on track as far as the Americans are concerned. Let's just hear what the president had to say.
And we're doing really well with Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran is not happy right now. Should have been done 47 years ago. Should have been done at least during the 47-year period. And it wasn't. Other presidents didn't do what was right. They should have done it a long time ago. It would have been much easier. And they want to settle so badly. They don't like what we're doing. And they do want to settle. We'll find out whether or not we settle with them or we just finish it off.
I think there are two things we can say now. The longer this goes on, the narrower the window for negotiation, because the two sides are becoming hardened. They're under pressure from their own domestic audiences not to compromise in any way because of the tit-for-tat strikes that are going on. And of course, the longer it goes on and the more it escalates, the more risk there is of miscalculation at some point. The president is already threatening, not for the first time, to target energy infrastructure in Iran, for example, many regard that as a breach of international law. But all it's going to take is an Iranian strike to claim a significant number of US casualties, or a US strike to be deemed to threaten the very existence of the regime in Tehran for all of this to reach a whole new level.
David Blevins with the latest from Washington. David, thank you. And you mentioned there the danger of possible escalation. Well, in the last few minutes, the Reuters news agency has reported that sirens have been heard in the Gulf state of Bahrain, and that is the location of a major American naval base. We will, of course, keep you up to date with all the developments from the region. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has also said that the oil is flowing like never before. Well, he's right in the sense that in recent days, the amount passing through the Strait of Hormuz is at a historic low. Here's our open source intelligence editor, Adam Parker.
The number of ships crossing the Strait of Hormuz has plummeted in recent days as strikes have escalated. A marine intelligence firm, Kepler, has been collecting data on ships crossing the strait. We can see in green here the last week that there's been a massive reduction. This is about 50% from other weeks since the conflict began. The highest number we've had is the end of June, where there were 77 crossings. The tracking suggests another really interesting shift too. If we look at this data, this is the routes that the ships have been taking when they've been crossing the strait. The green is via Iranian waters. The blue is closer to Oman, and that's the IMO suggested route. And the grey here is a dark or an unknown route. If we look at the map, we can see those routes really clearly. This is to the south, the Omani route. This was taken a few days ago. To the north, via Iran here, we can see some ships travelling that way. If we look again at the data, in June, the blue line is exceptionally thin. There is very few taking the southern route. It all opened, and when the de-escalation happened towards the end of June, we can see a huge number of ships in blue here that have been taking the Omani route. And then as July went on and the conflict escalated again, we can see the numbers are dropping right off. Till the last few days, there's only been one ship that has passed via Oman.
Well, we're now joined by American policy analyst Michael O'Hanlon. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. Now, in the past 20 minutes or so, President Trump has announced this $10 billion investment package when it comes to technology, of course, for defense. First of all, what do you make of that?
Well, you know, it makes some sense in the following way, that there's a new kind of deal making happening at the Pentagon. It's sometimes investing in American companies that have either been designed to replace a foreign supplier to reduce vulnerability in supply chains, or to simply expand capacity. And this has been seen as a new mechanism because, of course, President Trump won't be in office beyond 2028, early 29, and we can't know what future Congresses would do even starting next year in terms of appropriating money for annual purchases of weapons. And if you want defense industry to expand its capacity, therefore, you might need a more durable mechanism, a more lasting commitment of some type. And this kind of a fund can be designed either for that kind of purpose, or literally to help startups, you know, that might be otherwise starved for capital and doing things that are of interest to the Department of Defense. So I think it's probably a good idea, and it follows along the lines of some of what's already happening.
So I guess that's the long-term plan, and any kind of defense spending has to look in the long term. But we heard the president also say we need a little bit more speed. So obviously this comes months into the war in Iran. How much does the depletion of weapons that the war has caused play into all of this? It
definitely plays a role. I remember a year and a half ago, we interviewed Admiral Paparo of Pacific Command at Brookings, and he was already worried about depleted magazines of key munitions because of the Ukraine conflict and the ongoing shipment of weapons there. And then, of course, since that time, we've had now a big war in the Middle East that the United States itself has engaged in and had to provide a lot of weapons to its allies that were being bombarded, and also used a lot of weapons itself in offensive operations against Iran. And so when you add all that up, and you also understand that we haven't had the capacity to just turn on the spigot full bore because, again, factory space has been limited, you know, we're hurting a little bit. Now, I don't think that is going to lead Xi Jinping to start a war over Taiwan just because he thinks we're at, 50% of where we'd like to be with Tomahawk cruise missiles. But I do think that every little bit is a little bit worse. Every little bit of depletion, it makes the problem a little bit more serious. And people are not happy, not comfortable with where we are in inventory right now.
One thing is inventory, and of course what affects that is the continued escalation. We're seeing yet another night of attacks between Iran and the US. Looking at it more widely, do you see that as tit for tat is the phrase that's often used, or do you think there is a risk of an escalation back into full-blown war?
I think there's a definite risk of a return to full-blown war. I think both sides have an incentive that this not go on at a large scale indefinitely, but President Trump at the moment, having been portrayed as the guy who lost the war by the German chancellor and others, and the guy who seemed to be in more of a hurry to negotiate a deal than the Iranians, and having been also accused of signing a memorandum a few weeks ago that was favorable to Iran and delivered a lot of benefits up front while getting a nuclear deal only later on, I think he's frustrated. He's frustrated with the narrative. He's frustrated with the state of play. And probably he's using menacing words these days and talking about escalating in order to try to cow Iran back to the negotiating table. But that's been tried and failed before. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of an escalation. Again, I don't think it's going to be a ground war. I don't think it's going to be an all-out fight. I don't think it's going to be designed to go on for months. But I would expect, in fact, at this point, that something's going to break and that the United States may be willing to do more, not less, in the short term.
We've seen, of course, the focus on the Strait of Hormuz and the fact that not a lot of ships are managing to pass through there. Ultimately, who do you think has leverage right now between the U.S. and Iran?
I think both sides are angling to see if they have more leverage. Both have leverage. Both are doing the world economy a lot of harm right now. And whether what we're doing in the United States is necessary or not, and that's, of course, debated, there's no doubt that the counter blockade that we're imposing is, or about to now impose again, is hurting the world economy in general. But Iran also has clearly had the ability to shut down roughly 10% of the world's oil trade. And it's been surprising in many ways just how much the world's been able to adapt, in most cases, preventing huge increases in gasoline prices, for example. But around the world, people are hurting. And it's going to get worse, not better, because a lot of inventory has been tapped out of countries' strategic reserves in these last few months. So I think both sides are competing to see if they can get more leverage, because they both already have a lot.
Michael O'Hanlon, Director of Research in the Foreign Policy Programme at the Brookings Institution. Sir, thank you so much for sharing your views with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, as we were asking, is the war about to escalate, and could it be bigger and more destructive than before? That's what the latest episode of the World Podcast looks at this week. Scan the QR code to listen. Now, Yalda is on holiday, and Richard Engel is flying solo, having just returned from Iran. He asked the thoughts of Professor Robert Pape, a leading expert on war and military strategy.
Are you saying that the U.S. and maybe Israel are going to have to relaunch the war again to try and do what they didn't do the first time and make this a victorious war?
Yes, and it'll be a bigger, worse war. So this is not a situation where we're relaunching the old war. So a lot of the media now is saying, well, are we going back to March and April? No, this will be much worse than that.
We're not just restarting the car again.
We're not restarting the car. We're going to take the car and we're going to focus it in a different direction. We are going to likely have ground operations unfold where we're actually on the coast of Iran. I would say this is 70% likely.
Sir Keir Starmer told MPs today that this was the end of his political journey. During an emotional Prime Minister's question time, he largely avoided the usual jibes and paid tribute to those he had worked with over his 2 years in office.
To my colleagues on these benches, I am proud of all we have achieved together and proud of each and every one of you. To my successor and each of you, I will give my full support. To all colleagues across the House, can I wish you good health and happiness? To all those in the gallery whose lives have been changed or improved by this Labour government, and all across the country who struggle to be seen or heard, you're the reason I came into politics. To my wife and children, I love you. Goodbye.
Keir Starmer's last PMQs, well, it will be Andy Burnham who faces the next Prime Minister's questions. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has been looking at how he might do things differently from Keir Starmer on the world stage.
The make-a-field test at the heart of British politics.
Are you prepared for foreign policy to come second? The people in the building next to me have, for the last 2 years, supported the current Prime Minister on his top priority. All that will change when a new Foreign Secretary starts work in the building behind me, trying to work out how to apply the make-a-field test to a world in flux.
When policies come forward, if they don't work for people here, for the places of this constituency, if they don't lift people up, then they shouldn't happen at all.
Once we set foreign policy to make an example for the rest of the world. But now Andy Burnham wants to put his Manchester constituents at the heart of every decision, meaning lower bills, creating jobs, generating wealth. How big a switch is that in practice, though? We've spoken to experts and allies to find out.
I think a make-a-field test is actually quite a good yardstick for a future Prime Minister, or Burnham, to be able to say to President Trump, look, I'm doing the best for my people, just as you're doing the best for your people. Burnham should keep reminding President Trump that there are things we do with you together that you, the Americans, really benefit quite a lot from.
Leading the way on climate change, setting an example on human rights. Are these the sorts of things that could come second under the make-a-field test? Some experts say that politicians need to make the trade-offs clearer. Is this a Britain-first foreign policy?
Well, yes, it is. But I challenge you to find any government which will say to you that their foreign policy was not Britain first.
But you're saying that we didn't have a Britain first policy before now.
Britain first is not about our self-perception as an influential global leader who's one of the architects of the global order we are, but has to be the kind of moral and intellectual leader. We're saying that Britain first should be measurable in concrete terms.
But will such a switch take place in practice? Expect pushback from senior Labour figures who worry about compromise.
I think that when it comes to global climate change, I think that we are a leader. And Europe is heating up faster. Britain is heating up pretty fast. Make-a-field is heating up pretty fast.
There's an oven-ready deal with the EU. That's Keir Starmer's legacy to his successor. All it needs is Andy Burnham to ink it in the autumn. Europeans say the relationship is strong.
The relationship is in a good place, but that hopefully will get even to better places. We had a major summit last year that identified a number of areas for work.
But there are disagreements that Burnham will inherit as well. That includes higher tariffs on steel from the UK being sent to the EU.
That is not protecting oneself against the UK or the UK's economy. We're all doing it. So the question is whether we can look at better ways of acting in coordination on these issues, and that will be probably a discussion that may be taken forward.
Do you think that's a fruitful area that the next Prime Minister can take up with the European Union?
It will depend. I think this is one of the issues that may be on the table.
Now, with one eye to his party, Gaza is the one issue that Andy Burnham has spoken about ahead of entering number 10.
We've got to do more to put pressure on the Israeli government. I know many people feel that at the start of Israel's military action in Gaza, my party didn't get it right, and I am sorry about that.
It's a position his backbenchers largely support.
I think it's important to come in and take a harder line, because if you come in now as leader and you look now at what is going on, we've recognised Palestine, but there are people in this far-right Israeli government whose their ambition is simply to snuff out Palestine, and they say it.
But this will come at a cost.
It will make his life harder with the United States. It makes his life harder with the MAGA Republican group in the US. But I think he decided that seeming to dither, seeming not to take a stand, was actually more dangerous than taking a stand.
The Trump White House will also be watching defence spending. This is Andy Burnham's biggest early headache.
I will take my responsibilities fully to fund the defence investment plan.
Labour inherited defence spending of 2.3% of GDP, raised it to 2.4% and then 2.6%. But even with the new defence investment plan, it will only rise from 2.7% from next year until 2030, a long way from the 3.5% target by 2035. Amongst NATO's top 10 contributors, the UK's current defence budget lags behind many as a percentage of GDP, below the NATO average.
You'll have to make some choices where the trade-offs are going to be, where the collective savings are going to be made, and how you can put more money into defence and security.
So does Andy Burnham need to spell out how we'll do that in the first year or two?
He's going to have to do it early on in his tenure.
Andy Burnham has got to face the issue that we have talked so assertively about what we offer in defence, and we don't offer it. Whether Trump will give him time to do it, whether our European allies will give us time to do it, I don't know. Because the faith in Britain as a significant defence player who means what it says is under great doubt at the moment.
Our economic heft and defence might are the cornerstones of our global power, but both are under question. A make-a-field test might appeal to voters, but can Andy Burnham transform that onto the world stage as well? Soon we will know.
Sam Coates reporting there. Now, a Sky News helicopter has found a Russian warship off the British coast. The Russian warship, the Nostroshimi, was filmed in the North Sea. It's the second Russian vessel to escort Shadow Fleet ships in the Channel. Sky News located the warship when it was receiving fuel and supplies at sea. You're watching The World with me, Barbara Serra. Still to come, fatal shootings by ICE agents trigger new anger over President Trump's hardline immigration policies.
In the opening hours of the war on Iran, a primary school was hit by a missile designed to blow up military bunkers.
What I've seen that was done by Iran.
We've been investigating.
Can you explain why you cannot reveal what happened in Minab?
Denial, denial. And we've travelled to Minab, grave after grave. It's overwhelming. To gather evidence and talk to victims.
I just have a question, why?
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News. Is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Two fatal shootings by U.S. immigration enforcement, or ICE, agents have provoked new protests against President Trump's mass deportation efforts. In the northeastern state of Maine, an ICE agent killed a driver from Colombia during a traffic stop. And a Mexican national was shot and killed in similar circumstances barely a week earlier in Texas. Now, President Trump insists that ICE will not stop traffic stops. Well, Vanessa Cardenas is Executive Director of the Progressive Immigration Reform Advocacy Group, America's Voice. And Madam, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to focus specifically on the issue of traffic stops. But first of all, your reaction to the fact that these two men were killed within, just over a week of each other.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Well, this is devastating, and this is the result of the Trump and Stephen Miller mass deportation agenda. It is chaotic, it's costly, and it's now deadly. And we are seeing the body count increase, and it's a lot of it is driven by the quota system that this administration wants ICE to meet. They want to arrest 2,000 people a day. They have said that they want to deport 1 million people. And now they have all the money that Congress has given them. As you, I'm sure, have heard, Congress has given them $240 billion to implement the mass deportation agenda. So this is really devastating for immigrant communities, but it's also affecting the rest of America. And what we really need is a full and transparent investigation, because this cannot go on this way.
And I believe that, I mean, whether it's transparent or whether you think it's transparent is another issue, but there are investigations going on and the accounts around both of these killings are disputed. But I'd like to ask you specifically about the issue of traffic stops, because actually ICE had been told by the Trump administrations or officials within it to suspend traffic stops for a while, or at least minimize them. But then we heard from the president himself, who said, and I'm quoting, this is what he said: "We cannot give up on one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools, the traffic stop. Once we do, we're playing right into the criminals' hands." What do you see as the particular issue around this question of the traffic stop?
Well, there are several things, Barbara. I think the fact is that as long as Stephen Miller is in the White House, and as long as he is the driving force behind implementing this really extreme tactics, the tactics are not going to change. I think what you saw between yesterday and today is the pushback from the MAGA base, which is why Trump is now saying that they need to continue with the stops. It is also important to understand that the reason these stops are so important to DHS and to ICE is because they don't need warrants to stop people in their vehicles. That's why they're focusing on this. But ultimately, what we're seeing is that, again, they're not trained. They have no concern for human life. And of course, we know that they are not going only after people with criminal records, based on the recent examples of the last 2 weeks. In the case of Johan, the Colombian father that was killed a few days ago, he in fact had legal documentation. In the case of Lorenzo Araujo from Texas, he is a hardworking, law-abiding person, raised 3 U.S.-born kids. And again, he's a peaceful person, and he was, again, shot and killed. So their narrative that they're targeting people with criminal records is not accurate. And again, they're using this as a tactic to get as many people as possible to fill their quotas, their quota numbers.
I mean, again, just the issue, you mentioned the two cases, the one of Juan Sebastián Durán Guerrero. I think there's also reports that it wasn't actually the target of the enforcement operation, that sometimes being in the car obviously makes the situation worse. So just a final point, the border czar, Tom Homan, told reporters the investigation needs to play out and that officers will be held accountable if they're found to have acted inappropriately. I mean, that's what the border czar is saying. What do you make of what is effectively a promise?
Unfortunately, we cannot trust it. We already seen the example from Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis that their deaths have not been appropriately investigated. There's no accountability. So I truly do not trust Homan's promise that this is going to be fully investigated. We also know, and again, based on what Trump posted this morning, that he is giving them pretty much permission to continue their tactics. So I think that the hopes to have a transparent investigation is not great. Having said that, I think that the American public is against these tactics. We are seeing a lot of reaction at the local level, people standing up to ICE, and I think we're going to hopefully continue to see this from the American public.
Vanessa Cardenas, Executive Director of the Progressive Immigration Reform Advocacy Group, America's Voice. Madam, thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching The World with me, Barbara Serra. Coming up next, why the prison ordeal for a British couple jailed in Iran looks like it will drag on even longer.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The family of a British man imprisoned in Iran say that he's been handed an additional 2-year sentence. Craig Foreman and his wife Lindsay have been behind bars in Tehran since January of last year after being arrested while motorcycling through Iran on a round-the-world trip. They deny claims of espionage and have been starving themselves in protest. My colleague Gareth Barlow spoke to Lindsay Foreman's son, Joe Bennett.
I mean, the situation's getting alarming, to say the least. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment, but one report that we've got is quite a big piece, and it's a serious escalation. We've received reports that Craig has been given an additional 2 years in prison, no fair legal process. He was denied access to his lawyer, denied a translator, and I believe denied the opportunity to even defend himself. And that is so concerning for us and the people involved in the campaign, because there's just no justice in it at all.
How did you find out about this?
So we've got trusted sources from inside Iran. Now, that might be friends or family of people that are also detained inside Iran, people who are close to the legal team working for my mum and Craig. Various ways of getting it out. I mean, we can't verify these reports because we haven't been given the whole picture, but everything's pointing to this being done about a week ago.
And there was a chilling element to this, that there was a sense almost that Craig was duped into going to this appointment, that he was kind of sold a lie as to what was going to happen to him. What have you heard regarding that?
Yeah, and I think that's a trend, not just for Craig, but for other inmates as well, but that they lie to people about the reasons that they're being called to the office. Sometimes it may be to see family, and then they end up getting interrogated. He may have been led to believe that he was going to see my mum. But yeah, he was, from what we understand, taken into a room with two men, questioned, or more so allogated, and then left with 2 years extra on his sentence. And it's unbelievable, really. We don't understand where this come from or what due process there's been. There hasn't been any. You know, we were shocked as anybody to start to hear these reports coming from inside Evin.
What support are you getting at this time from the Foreign Office, from the UK government?
I mean, the one thing that we could potentially look at as a positive, and we do welcome the appointment, is the special envoy. In terms of what we're looking at from the Foreign Office, we've demanded a meeting with the Foreign Secretary now, because this needs to be taken and escalated to a very serious place. You know, they've been prescribed the IRGC as a terrorist organisation. My parents are at the centre of it, and at the moment it doesn't feel as though the urgency is there for the Foreign Office. You know, it's worrying and it's alarming at the lack of action that I've seen, to be honest.
You mentioned your mum. What do you know of how she's doing at the moment?
That's hard. I haven't spoken to my mum for over 2 months now. I don't truly know how she is. We know that the reports are coming out of the hunger strike that they're having, that they are losing a lot of weight. I'm hearing threats that if communication isn't back on board, that she may just go to drinking completely tap water. I think she's taking other bits like milk and olive oil at the moment to help sustain it. But it's really hard. I don't truly know how my mum is. I don't truly know how Craig is. These are all reports that we get from third parties, and again, there's an element of trust in that. You know, these might not be as factually accurate as they could be, but we have to take some solace in that we're hearing they're okay. To answer the question, I don't honestly know.
You talk about the hunger strike. It's been ongoing for them both for for weeks now. How as a family does that feel? It speaks of the desperate situation they find themselves in, but it also must deeply impact you as well.
I mean, it impacts us as a family. We care deeply for them, and I think they're already enduring an experience that not many, have to face or would want to go through. But their health's deteriorating. Every day at the moment matters. We don't know whether they're receiving proper medical care. And we're at such an alarming rate of days now that, we can't wait another week or another month for them to be seen. This has to happen immediately. We have to, that is priority number one for us at the moment, is immediate welfare and medical access. We have to know independently how they're doing and how they're coping. On the face of it, they can tell people they're okay, but I don't think that's the true feeling of them both. It's alarming. We are all worried sick because of how long it's been. I didn't know the body could endure like it has. It still fights. They still fight. We still fight. But every day that passes, it gets harder.
It's something to hear you speak about this, Joe, but it's very difficult to really kind of fully appreciate it, having not been there. But there are other British families who have been there, who have been in similar situations. To what degree do you get support, solace, help, conversation with other families who have endured a similar path?
Yeah, I mean, we lean on them heavily, to be completely honest with you. I think that, that's the glimmer of hope that this story does end. I think that's one thing that gives us the fight to keep on going, is that there is hopefully an end to this, and they are proof of that. So massively important to learn of their experiences, how they overcome scenarios, how they got through their day to day. And it's useful to know that on both sides of the coin, how, Richard Ratcliffe, for example, dealt with Nazanin's case here, and how Nazanin dealt with her time in Evin. I think to understand that gives us, as I say, it's hope, it's determination, and it's the sense of not to give up. I think it's quite easy sometimes to bury your head, but ultimately, we need to keep fighting for them.
Joe Bennett speaking there, and Anushya Shuri spent nearly 5 years in Evin prison before he was released in March 2022 alongside Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. And he joins us now. Mr. Shuri, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. A very moving interview, obviously, with Joe Bennett there, the son of Lindsay Foreman. I'd just like to get your reaction. You obviously went through a similar thing. Your reaction to Craig Foreman's sentence being extended by 2 years and the fact that both of them are now on hunger strike.
I'm extremely worried because the situation now compared with when I was in Evin has changed dramatically, because after the war started, what I have heard from friends who have been released recently and have contacted me and have talked about this dire situation in Evin prison, it is far worse than when I was there, which is extremely worrying.
Could you just explain to us in what way it's worse now because of the war?
Medical care is almost non-existent. We had a small shop that we could shop from, the necessities that they would actually provide for us, and we would pay for them. I think that has completely stopped. And the care that a prisoner needs, even then, I remember the dentists, for example, were very famous for pulling 10 teeth in 10 minutes, that bad. And even that has become worse than when I was there.
It obviously sounds absolutely horrific. I mean, in light of that, what would you want the UK government to do, I guess, more than what it's doing? Because on the one hand, there is the conflict between the US and Iran, but also the UK itself, over the past few days, banned the support for the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards. What does that do to the negotiations that one would assume are ongoing?
That's going to make it more difficult. But at the same time, I am happy to know that this new envoy has been appointed, because during these years of me being in prison, there are only a handful of politicians who were decent enough to care for us, and especially my family hold a great respect for Alistair Burt for all the things that he has done. So I'm hopeful that something will. I mean, my wife sent an email to Dominic Raab 6 years ago, in December 2019, asking for an envoy to be appointed, and it took 6 years for it to happen. I mean, what can I say?
As you mentioned, though, but Alistair Burt, the former Conservative Middle East minister, has now been appointed for British citizens detained overseas. On a final point, we were just hearing that Craig and Lindsay Foreman are now on hunger strike. And Joe Bennett, Lindsay's son, said he hadn't even realized that people could live that long on hunger strike. When you were in Evin prison, you went on hunger strike as well, if I'm not wrong. Just tell us why you would do something like that and what motivates you to do something like that in such dreadful circumstances.
It comes out of desperation. If we were protected enough by the British government, we wouldn't end up going on hunger strike. So there is a shortcoming somewhere that manifests itself in another place. So I think the UK government during all these years, I mean, there are other British dual nationals in Evin prison now, but because of their concerns, perhaps they don't want to make themselves public. So hunger strike happens when you are desperate, and that is very dangerous. It can actually deteriorate you sometimes beyond repair. And I hope this is not going to happen to them.
Anushi Ashuri, we're going to have to leave it there. Mr. Ashuri spent nearly 5 years in Evin prison before being released in March 2022. Sir, thank you so much for sharing your views and your experiences with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, we wanted to show you some rather terrifying pictures coming out of Canada, where rail workers have filmed the moments their train was surrounded by a wall of wildfire. Now, the crew managed to escape safely. It happened in the north of Ontario. That's Canada's most populous province. There are more than 100 fires burning out of control across the country. And still to come on The World, the arrest of a British fraudster who was tracked down in Tenerife by Sky News.
In the opening hours of the war on Iran, a primary school was hit by a missile designed to blow up military bunkers.
What I've seen, that was done by Iran.
We've been investigating.
Can you explain why you cannot reveal what happened in Minab?
Denial, denial.
And we've travelled to Minab, grave after grave. It's overwhelming, to gather evidence and talk to victims.
I just have a question, why?
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
Is it crazy? It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat.
It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island.
The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre.
The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin.
Jerry, any comments on the judge's decision? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry? This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial.
Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach, Simon Harris.
Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as President and Leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
A fraudster who stole more than £300,000 from a pensioner and spent it on Botox, a luxury car and lavish meals has been arrested after Sky News tracked her down in Tenerife. This is what happened when our reporter, Phoebe Southworth, confronted the criminal outside her home in Spain earlier this year.
I don't need to answer these questions.
But you did take the money, didn't you?
Did I take the money? I was her power of attorney and her executor, and her solicitors got all the money. You don't even know her. She had 10 carers, OK? It was a business car.
Are you going to go back and hand yourself in, Pamela?
No, because
You've done nothing wrong. Why are you here?
Because my appeal's going through.
Well, it's understood that convicted fraudster Pamela Gwinnett will appear in court in Spain before being flown back to the UK. Phoebe gave us this update.
This was an extraordinary case where a woman called Pamela Gwinnett essentially took advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic when lots of elderly people would have felt very isolated to con a vulnerable woman called Joan Green. She was elderly, she had diminished mental and physical capacity. She was in a really precarious situation, and Pamela Gwinnett worked that out quite quickly. She convinced Joan that they were friends, and she eventually managed to convince Joan to transfer her lasting power of attorney. So effectively giving Pamela Gwinnett control over the levers of Joan's finances. So really a ruthless con woman who recognised vulnerability and pounced on it. This all kind of came to light because Joan's family worked out what was going on. They told the police. Eventually, Pamela Gwinnett was arrested and she was charged with fraud. However, the case went ahead without her because she fled to Tenerife in April last year. And she's been there ever since. We went over to Tenerife to try to find her, and we did that with the help of Joan Green's family and also with the help of neighbours. You can see now the apartment complex that she was living in Tenerife. It was really picturesque. It was by the seaside in the south of the island, and all the neighbours there were absolutely furious that this woman who had done something so terrible to a vulnerable woman was allowed to just gallivant around. She was seen swimming in the pool at the complex. And they wanted her gone. But of course, we've all been waiting for this moment when the Spanish police would arrest her and then set in motion the process to get her back to the UK. That has now happened. We were told that she had been arrested. We now understand the next step is for her to be brought before a court in Madrid and then hopefully flown back to the UK in a matter of weeks. But it's been a really protracted process. Joan Green's family have been waiting for months to get this woman home so she can face justice.
Right. Well, as you may know, there is a certain game going on in Atlanta, and it's heading towards its end. It's 2-1 for Argentina. Obviously, it's being played in the US. Millions of people watching here in the UK. Let's go straight to Wembley, where, of course, thousands have gathered. You can see some slightly somber faces there. England have about 7 minutes or so to equalise. It's being watched across England, of course. These are pictures coming out of Leeds. Again, scenes of celebration from about, 40 minutes ago have now been replaced by quite somber and worried faces. Similar scenes in Bristol. Another, again, people gathered there, watching what could be the final minutes of this World Cup semi-final between Argentina and England. Let's look at Brighton quickly. Again, somber faces as the time is ticking to the end of that game. Just watching there, about 5 minutes left, and let's go back to Wembley. Well, Anna Botting will be here, of course, to bring you the latest reaction from across the country to the final result of that game, whatever. Thanks for watching. Good night.